Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining me for the second part of our webinar series. And just before we go into what we'll be covering today, I wanted to set some ground rules. We do not have the chat box enabled, but we do have the question answers available. So if anybody wants to ask questions as we're going along, and I'll encourage people to do so, I will either cover them live or I'll wait till the end and come back and review the ones that have been sent over. So no question will go unanswered, so please feel free to engage as much as you want. So my name's Craig Nathan Moss and I am Head of Engagement here at Gridfox. And part of my role is really to work with our users to identify things they like, things they don't like, things that could be more intuitive. And I'm that link to our product team that can effectively help build what our customers are asking for. And I'm going to be running the webinar today. I did the one last week, which was getting started with a table and adding data. It was the most basic of the webinar series. Today, we're going to expand on that a little bit and show you all the different field types you can utilize and also add another table onto the two that we created last week. So without any further ado, let us get straight on and have a look at some things. So these are the two tables we produced last week. It's not exactly the same project. I've just copied it and put some different data in, but we effectively built one table called projects, and then we had a relationship to our tasks, which showed within the same area. So projects had tasks. I will go into more detail and show some of the data in there shortly in case you didn't see the first webinar. But today's session is first of all going to focus on fields and the different types that you can utilize as a Gridfox user. So the first one in there is literally a text field. And this means it will allow you to add in some text in one line. And to the right-hand side of all these different options, you'll see three buttons, or three dots, should I say. If I click on that, it's going to open up some options depending on what the field type is. Now, in the majority of cases, it will look like this. You will have the ability to change the text, delete the field or close it, or specify if it's referenced, unique, or required. And just to explain a little more detail about what they are, is reference basically means that that field is going to be a reference point for searching data. So it needs to be unique. So for example, if I was to start numbering things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth, that would be unique because each reference has a different number. If I was to use a name as my unique reference field, that might work, but there is a strong potential if you're using customers, for example, that two customers might have the same name. And prime example, Sky may refer to the broadcast that we all know, but there's potentially another customer called Sky that deals with, I don't know, open airspaces or something like that. So you have to be careful about naming things the same because it just wouldn't allow it. It would block you from progressing. The next one down, is it a unique field? Well, you can still have a reference field, which needs to be unique, and also a secondary field that needs to be unique, or a third or a fourth, as long as you tick that box. So the scenario of that might be you've got a reference field and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, and you need another unique field. And in that unique field, it needs to be something like the company name. So maybe it won't let you progress unless those company names are different. So you could have then Sky TV and Sky Outdoor or whatever that other company is called. And the final box on there is required. So that is basically saying, do you want to make this field mandatory? So the user categorically has to put something in there before they can save that information. Now, the next field down is a bigger text area, and you can see that being represented by 3 lines. Basically, if you've got a little bit more information than just one line and you want to ensure that it's all captured and viewed sensibly, you've got the same 3 options in this field. Rich text is yet again a bigger area, and this will allow you to really put as much information as you want in there. I've seen people copy reports in there. You could potentially put CVs in there if it's a copy and paste job. And again, you've got the same 3 options there as well. Moving on from there, we have a number field. Now the number field allows you, as the name suggests, to put a numerical representation within that field. So anything with numbers. Now the thing to note about this is it will eliminate any zeros at the front of it. So a common mistake that people potentially could make is, I'm going to put a mobile number in there. Well, it's not going to work properly because assuming it starts 077, it's just going to start with 77. So not quite accurate. And in that scenario, you just use a text field because that will allow numbers as well. And it's the same 3 boxes in there too. Now in the money field, it'll allow you to put numbers in. However, it will then precede that number with a currency symbol. And the currency symbols we have at the moment are Great British Pounds, US dollars, and the euro. That is typically where the majority of our users are based at the moment, but we absolutely will over time expand that out if there's a desire to do so. Next up is percentage. You've got the same 3 original boxes as before, and all that will happen there is once you put your number in, it will then follow it with a percentage sign. Date is the next one down. Now the date will show depending on how your computer settings are. So I'm based in the UK and my date is shown as day, month and year. So that's how it will show in my Gridfox project because it's going to replicate your system settings. Obviously, if you're in the US, it would show month, day, year, and maybe it's done in different ways throughout the world. So it will replicate whatever shows on your system. And in the 3 dots, what you can do is you can set this to default to today's date. So it might be useful if you are logging activity against a record and you want to know when that was created. Well, that created date can be automatically populated because as you're doing it, it obviously says today's date. Date and time will allow the same sort of thing, but it allows you to put a specific time afterwards as well. So if you're working to a strict deadline within a 10-hour period, for example, you can literally tag things by the minute if you wanted to. And there isn't a default to today because that could mean anything because time changes all the time. Next one down to checkbox. Again, there's only those 3 fields there. Quite simply, a box where you can check or tick if you're in the UK and untick and uncheck if you don't want that to be shown. And I will demonstrate all these shortly as well. A list field is ones that we covered yesterday. This basically allows you to add list items. So like in Excel, where you can choose from a selected list within the cell, you cannot type in there. You have to pick one of the predetermined options. This is exactly the same sort of idea. So in this case, I'd have to check one of these temperature descriptions. An auto counter will be just that. That will literally go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. And there is one other thing in here, which is an ID mask. Now, I will come to that later on, and I'll give you an example of what an ID mask looks like and when it's required. But top line details right now, there will be scenarios where you are looking at information and it's giving you the auto counter number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when actually that doesn't mean anything to you because you're more interested in the name. But you can't set the name as a reference field because you've got duplicates. So you can overwrite that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to give you some more information. And I will show you that towards the end of the session. Image, again, just those 3 boxes. An image will allow you to upload something and it will display in a square. Similarly, an icon will do the same sort of thing, but it will almost show it in a badge as well. So it's a circular badge. I'll show you what that looks like in just 1 second. Formula. Now, this is a formula field which allows you to create something. So if you think of Excel, but we've taken kind of the key functions that people use in that and just put them in here. And it's very easy to build what you want. You just literally select the fields you want. You then select the function and the operator. Gives you examples on the right-hand side. and it will return it here. So in this example, and you'll see the result shortly, I've got money times 0.2, which is effectively identifying how much VAT is to be added on in a monetary return. And again, you'll see that shortly. Now, a URL just allows you to simply enter a URL. So that will link you right through to a website if that's what you're capturing. And the user is going to identify a person who's attached to this project that is potentially responsible for working on that row item or has added that row item or whatever else you want to capture. So that's a run through of how they all function. Let's go into user mode and just see what the data looks like for each one of these fields. So when I click in here, the first ones we covered was the text options. And at the top, we've got this small amount of text. You've got one line, very much a summary. And the next one along the text area gives you a little bit more to work with. However, if you need lots of information, the rich text area is the one that you want to be utilizing. Because as I said before, you can copy and paste endless amounts of data into that section. As we move down, the number field will only allow me to put a number in. I literally cannot type anything else. I'm trying to pass some of the letter characters now. Oh, it's let me have E, and that's the only one. Not sure how that one's crept through. But you simply type a number in, and you can toggle this up and down if you wanted to as well. Money, same sort of thing. You can change the amount here, and once I come out of it, it will update it with the pound sign. Percentage is a written figure as well, so put that to 90. The same sort of thing happens as you saw in money. The date field will allow you to select today at the bottom, or if it's defaulted, as we talked about before, it will automatically pre-populate. Or if not, I can just select another date from the calendar. And the same with date and time, but you've also got the ability to choose that specific time to the minute as well. The checkbox was the next thing we looked at. Just quite simply, you can tick it or untick it as you require. And here's that predetermined list where we can only choose one option from it in those descriptives. The next two up are image and icon. And the best way of me to show you this is actually in this result screen. So the image is quite a decent size. The icon is a little bit smaller. So you might use this for stock control where you're wanting to see a product, and this potentially for an internal caricature or a company logo or something that suits what you want. Formula is, like I said, uneditable. You can't do anything here. And that's purely because it's reading 200 and it's timesing it by 0.2. And that's giving you that £40 there. The URL is the thing that you can click through to go straight to a website, which I will show you in just 1 second. And the user is obviously me, which you can toggle through anybody attached to this project. So if we're in results mode and I click Gridfox, it takes me straight through to the website. And it's probably a good time here for me to mention that all these webinars are stored under this webinar tab. So if I click into that, if you missed the first one, there is that recording in there, and I will add the recordings for this one once I finished as well. Okay, so those are all the screens that I promised. Now then, the next thing to touch on here is the ability to customize what you're seeing. So if I go to Screen Builder, there are 3 different views that we can customize. We can customize the fields table. So that is the results that you see in this situation here. We can customize the edit field. So when you have records and you click in to change things, a little like I've just shown you before, you can change the order of how these live. And the same when you're creating a new field, you can display different things in different orders. So starting with the fields table, what you can actually do on here is you can first of all move these around. So maybe I want the money to be second and not first. You can hide information. So if I don't want that rich text to come back because there's too much, I can drop it on the left and it'll disappear. And if I now save this and go to user mode, you'll see how money is there and the large text area has disappeared. But the next thing that you can do is in edit field, you can do the same sort of thing. Now, I have had people ask me before, why would you have a difference between edit and create? And it is just the way that some people set their projects up. Because sometimes when they create a project, they might not necessarily want some of that data to be changed upon editing. And so to hide it is probably an easier way of trying to control that. So if, for example, someone doesn't want someone else to see the value, they can move this money field into the right-hand side, and that will not be available when you're going to edit. And similarly, if you want these in different orders, you can just drag and drop them to wherever you want on this sheet as well. Create field's exactly the same. So you can drag and drop things to the right-hand side, or you can reorder the way in which these fields display when you start to create a record. Now, for those people that don't want two separate views, there is a way on the right-hand side of copying edit layout. So if I'm in created, I can copy edit. If I'm in edit, I can copy create. So it's a lot quicker if that's what you want to go down the route of doing. Other thing on here is this little computer icon versus a mobile icon. Quite simply just shows what it's going to look like if you're on a cell phone or a computer. So really useful just in case you're accessing Gridfox through different means. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to touch on is going to be how to add another table. So we've got these two tables on here already. And let me just give you the user case for this. So we've got a project. Let's just say we've got this build website. Within the build website, we have different tasks. And this is why there's an arrow, which you'll see again shortly, between projects and tasks, because it means there's a relationship there. So under my build website project, and if you haven't seen the first part of our webinar series, it might be best just to go back and look through this, so this might make a bit more sense to you. But within there, we have tasks. And if I click on a task, it gives me that information, but there's no further links underneath. Or what if we need to have activities within tasks? Because find a host might be, I don't know, research GoDaddy.com and ascertain how much budget you're going to require to set up a website. So in Table Builder, we can add another table. And I can do that, and I can name it activity. Nope, that's spelled wrong. Activity. And when I do that, it will pluralize it, and I can just put it where I want it. Now, let's just say in here we've got a name. We'll get a little description in there as well. Oops. Description. And maybe we've also got a checkbox. Because instead of having a, in progress, backlog, etc., we can just check it off. Okay. Now I'm going to want to link this because it's going to be sat underneath tasks. So tasks are going to have activities, and that first categorization is exactly how I want this set up. Again, we're going to talk about data relationships in another series, but for now, let's set it up like that, and we'll just in this scenario use the name as my unique reference. So now I can go back into Screen Builder. Under my Build Website project, I'm going to say, okay, find a host. Well, actually, there's two activities to that. The first one is research GoDaddy. Bad spelling, but you know what I mean. And I'll tick that as done. And then the other thing in there can be decipher budget. Obviously, there's a place to put some text if I wanted to as well. But now I can see within each task exactly what I need to do next. Okay, the other part of this webinar is focused around the ability to add filters. So if I go back to my tasks, at the moment you can see, let's use status for example. There are two different statuses as it stands. We do have more to select from, but there's two right there. If I've got a long list of maybe 100, it could be that I want to see these at a glance. So I can create a filter by using this funnel. And I can filter things by whatever I want, really. It could be user. So if you've got a few people attached to this project, maybe you want them easily to identify what tasks are outstanding for them. You could do it by dates. So you could do it by months, or you could even predetermine 2 specific points, an end point and a start point. Because that could be like a 2-week sprint, which I know a lot of teams work towards. In this scenario, I'm going to separate things by status, and I'm going to identify my backlog. I'm going to save that as backlog. So now on the left-hand side, you'll see at a glance all the things that are in that status. If I go back to tasks, you'll see that I've got all of them there. I'm just going to change this back to backlog so that you'll see how that updates. If I go back into my filter, there are now 2 items in there. So you can get creative with those filters, and it will really help you, easily identify things in this format. But when we also touch on workflows, which I think is in session 4, you'll see how these filters can really help you build some workflows that are a bit more customizable than without them. Okay, so there are a couple of things that I've promised to go back over. The first one is ID masks. And I'm going to use this exact example of projects and tasks in here. So let me go back to user mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a task. And when I'm in that task, I've already got an ID mask in. So let me eliminate that and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So we'll get rid of this. We'll close it and we'll save it. Without an ID mask, if I go into this task, it is just showing project number 2. Now that does not mean anything to me, but it does because I've only got 2 projects, so I remember what it means. But if I've got loads of projects, I don't know which project to tag in here because 2 is not very descriptive. So the way that we overcome that is we can do this ID mask. So instead of saying I want the project ID to show, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, what this is saying, and don't worry, we will cover ID masks in more detail in session 5. What this is saying is I want to show the name, and then in brackets afterwards, I want to show the project ID. Now, when I go back into that exact same task, what you'll see is build website and the number 2 in brackets. So it's immediately obvious to me which project that is now associated to. Okay, now from the session this morning, there were some questions that were asked, and I wanted to revisit some of those because there's some really useful things in there that I think were beneficial for everybody else to see as well. And the first one was, can you create a formula across different tables? So for example, if there's a value in projects, can you create a formula that connects another value in here and give you a result? The answer is yes, but let me just show you exactly what I mean by this. So I'm using finances here. I know it's not really relevant to this task, but hopefully you get the idea. And maybe that's VAT. And then I'll just move this down a bit and do another one. This is going to be my formula tab. And we'll call this total money. Now, how I'm going to do this is I'm going to configure my formula. And I showed this box quickly before, but now it's going to be even more beneficial to actually talk through a live example. So I'm looking for, first of all, in my projects table, the total. And you'll see here that we have different tables to choose from. So I want my total, and you'll see how it's put that in there. On the right-hand side, it's giving me examples of how to do this. So I want to add my VAT on. I'm going to put a space. I'm going to put a plus. I'm going to put another space. And then I'm going to identify on my other table the VAT. And we can return that as a monetary value in Great British pounds. Now, once I validate that field, it gives me the message to say it is valid. So if I go back to user mode now, let me just put any sort of total in there. We'll use this one because that's got more information in. So we'll put £50 in here, save and close it. And then we will go into one of these tasks. Let's use the in progress one because it's identifying it. You'll see it's already formulated £50 because it's looking for the value in VAT. It hasn't found one, so it's just added that first value that it's found. If we then put £10 in here, save and close it, you will now see that that has been updated to £60. So that formula has added the first figure from projects, second figure from this table, put it in as total money. So the answer to that question was yes, you can create formulas across different tables. Other questions that we had was, number one, do all tables need to be connected? The answer to that's no. I mean, this has got a live example of that here, whereby I've got a project string where I have projects and tasks and activities. Fields is left completely on its own. And I know I did it in this case just to give a demonstration, but that can work in the real life as well. So it may be you've got projects, tasks, activities. Maybe you just want an expenses table. So not technically connected to any of this, although I guess you could add it on if you wanted to, but it's just a way of you tracking expenses separately. It does not have to have any connection. It just won't be able to reference anything else. So it'll just be sat alone like a spreadsheet on its own tab. And another question that I had today was, can a percentage field be a calculation? And once again, the answer to that is yes. So let me give an example of this. It may be that you have, we'll use money again. Why don't we say this is a total sale, and we'll say this is the profit. And so what we're basically saying is we've done a project for somebody, it costs, I don't know, £1,000, but actually I'm only making £200. What's the percentage of total sale that is my profit? So I'll then add another field, which is formula, percentage of sale received. I'll click on the three dots and I will then start to configure the formula. And once again, we're back to this area. Now it's slightly easier in this situation because they're all on the same table. So there's no real complication in trying to identify exactly where I find these fields. So what I want to do is I want to click total sale. I then want to space, and I'm going to put my division in here. I actually typed in plus before. I could have clicked on any one of these to do the same thing. I've done this wrong way around, haven't I? Let's start again. We want profit divided by total sale, and I want it to return it as a percentage to 2 decimal places. Now, when I hit validate field, it lets me know that that's worked. Notice how I haven't needed to do any other sort of calculation. And what I mean by that is, if you're using Excel, sometimes you might have to put a times 100 on there to get the percent because it's going to come back as a decimal. But if you're selecting percent, Gridfox will automatically do that for you. So now, if I go and create a live example, it's in my activities table. Let's go just into here. If the total sale was £2,000, I received £350 profit. When I save this and come out of it, you will now see that that is a 17.5% profit. Again, it's a field that I can't change. It's one that's calculated, so it's set in stone based on what these two values show here. So I think that's everything that I was going to cover. There's only one more question that's come through, and that is just getting some clarity over the builders, the screen, the edit views. So just to revisit this, there are 3 different views that you can have. There is this table view, which will effectively show you when you're in this position. So this is your results effectively. There is your edit view, and there is your create project view. Edit view is if I was to now go into a record, this is now classed as edit. If I was to create a new record, this would be create new. And so in Screen Builder, you can reorder these columns by dragging them. You can hide them by putting them on the right-hand side. Or in the edit and create, similar sort of thing, but you can just drag and drop them wherever you want them to go. So 3 different views depending on what you're doing in the app, and obviously we're giving you the capability to edit any one of those as well. So I hope you found that useful. We are going to be posting this up on the website probably in the next couple of working days or so. So have a look out for that if you want to revisit and play anything. You don't need to do much except hit play. It's not requiring any sort of registration. And as always, I am here for any assistance that you need. And so to get through to me, you can either email me directly. I'm going to start bottom up with this. You can either email me directly. You can put a link through in my Calendly, and that will take you through to a area where you can set a time and date for a 30-minute session. And if you haven't already signed up, then please do so for free. Again, we don't take card details. You just need to put your information in, and that can be found through the Gridfox website. At the top right, there'll be a button that says sign up for free. So I hope you found this session informative. Thank you again for your attendance, and I look forward to speaking and working with some of you in the future.